Hello, my crafty friends. Today I am sharing a pop-up card that I made to send to a friend. We adopted a rescue about 3 months ago, and she was underweight when she came to us, not because she wasn't getting food from the foster family. They were, in fact, even giving her puppy kibble to try to put some calories on her. She just wasn't really that interested in eating. So I've worked very, very hard to get her to eat, and she is eating much better now, and that was in part due to some help from my friend Debbie. And actually, Debbie's given me some other good tips. I'm a dog person, and I've had dogs almost my whole life too, but sometimes you're just not seeing the forest for the trees, as it were. So thank you, Debbie, for for helping me out. And Willow is filling out a little bit, but more than that, her coat is filling in. I think she's going to look very different in a year from now. She's got these long hairs that where she was just short hair before. There's long hair sprouting. She's got a bunch of, we call them baby hairs, sticking out on her head, and some white hairs sprouting on her face. Now she's only 2, so they're not gray hairs, but all of these white hairs. So that's what good food and nutrition and a stable home and love will give a dog, I guess, hey? Anyhow, so this is the card that I made her as a thank you. And of course, you may have seen my haul video from Picket Fence Studios, where I had won a prize on Instagram, and it was a gift card to their shop. And so I have that haul video. I will link it in the description box below if you're curious. But I got to choose a bunch of things from their store, and of course I chose 2 of their dog stamps. So Grace Puppy and Lucy Puppy. I had planned on doing Grace Puppy on the front of the card, but it didn't really fit. So I used the sentiment, "You had me a dog," from Grace Puppy, and then the other sentiments from Lucy Puppy. And I have to remember, I let the dog lick this envelope. I got to remember to stamp that on the envelope just because it's too funny. So those are the stamps that I used. No pattern paper on this card, which is kind of mind-boggling. If you follow me, you know I use pattern paper almost exclusively. So this one is larger than A2. It is a 7 by 5 inch and fits in a standard A7 envelope. I stenciled on the envelope. I did some watercolor, and I'll have a little tutorial on that further on in the video. So I did that watercoloring. Now it did buckle the card a little bit. I kind of thought it was a heavy enough weight, and there wasn't a lot of water, so I was a little bit disappointed that it did buckle, but in the end I still liked the look, so I went with that. And I did another panel with the same technique. So here's the leftover, the scraps that you can see where I cut that from. And I used Karen Burniston's new Label Charm pop-up for the mechanism. Now it is designed to work on a card like this with 3 of these, but you can see I used it vertically and didn't add the 3rd label. Instead added a circle where I can write her my note of thanks. I did some stenciling with paw prints, and that is the Your Next Stamp paw prints stencil and blender brushes and daubers, and that's what I used on the envelope as well. The sentiment, "I love being your friend," with the paw prints, and then the sentiment says, "Thank you for taking care of my fur baby." So it's a card that folds quite flat. Now because this is a 7-inch width, it would not fit through a regular die cutting machine. I do have a larger one that I can pull out when I'm making a larger card. But just a heads up, if you were going to do that, you might be better off to do a 5 by 6 card, which would shorten it by, a 1/2 inch on either side. You would just kind of smoosh things together, and then that would fit through a standard machine and still fit in a 5 by 7 envelope. But I did want the full 5 by 7. In fact, I'm making a lot more 5 by 7 cards than I used to, because I really like the size. I like how they feel in your hand. So that Label Charm pop-up, whatever image you have on the front, pivots to the inside when the card opens. This is a strip of just rainbow packing tape. I roll it out very carefully and slowly because it does tend to buckle and stretch, but I will cover a sheet of letter size cardstock with it and then just use my paper trimmer and trim it down into strips. I put them in a plastic envelope, and when that envelope is empty, then I make another set. But I always have these rainbow strips on hand, and I liked the way the color worked on the rainbow card. For the circle, I used blending brushes and just blended some of the same colors. I used Catherine Pooler inks, and everything that's available is linked on my blog, which is in that description box. So let me move some of this stuff out of the way, and I'll show you how I did that watercoloring. So I'm just going to do a little bit more on here because I've shown it before and you've probably seen it before. This is more just if you're curious as to how I did it. So I used 3 colors of Catherine Pooler ink. Oh, Pucker Up, I think, is the pink, Aquatini for the blue, and then Glitz for the yellow. And so all I did is take a piece of plastic. So this was, I think this had embellishments in it. I save all these little bags because they come in so handy. Just smoosh the color onto the plastic bag. So you've got something like that. And then use a spray bottle. Now I'm using the sprayer because that's what I have in my craft room. And you just spray it with water, which activates the ink. This is a water-based ink. And then you simply just paint with it. Smoosh it around. You can do more or less, and then I just set it aside to dry. So that's how easy that is. You can use watercolor paper, which works really well. I found the 110-pound cardstock. This is the regular cardstock that I use all the time, so it's not a heavyweight cardstock, but I find that 110-pound cardstock, even the one from Michael's, that heavyweight cardstock, it holds the water really well, and I never have a problem with anything buckling when I use that 110-pound. So that's how I did the watercoloring for that card. So there's another look at it there. You can see I just dabbed that plastic right onto it, and then once it was dry, I stamped the dog on top with Versaclear ink. And then I'm not sure if it shows up in video, but there's a little bit of Wink Estella on the nose. And then I had another extra label that I wasn't sure if I was going to use or not. I didn't know whether I was going to cut that one out of white or whether I would need another label. So now I have a rainbow label that I can use on another card another day. This morning I went to address the card and write my note inside, and I realized I hadn't gone over the alternative way that I used the label charm pop-up. So luckily I noticed before I signed it, this card is going in the mail today. So I'm just going to go over those quick details for you. So again, we use the label charm pop-up, and this die here is the mechanism that you would cut into the front of your card. And that gives you the pivoting label that pivots to the inside when you open the card. Remember, Karen Burniston has a full assembly video on how to assemble this on her website, and I will have that linked in the description box. I will also try to just link the label charm pop-up so you can just click on that and go right and see the assembly video. So that is the mechanism. And then this label here, you can see there's a tab on the side. And when you do it traditionally, or how it's intended, you cut this label twice. Once to attach, so that's what this piece is here. There is a tab that attaches to the pivoting panel, and that second one you cut goes down here, and the tab attaches to the back of this one. So that pulls this forward. Well, I knew I didn't want that third label here. In this orientation, that little label just kind of got lost. I couldn't slide it down to put in the center of the circle without it looking a little odd. So I just cut I'm not even sure if you're going to be able to see it. So I cut 1/2 inch by 1/4 inch tab and just folded it in the center. I was going to attach it to the back of this label and then to the card base, but I decided to attach it to the front and then use that watercolored piece to die cut another label from, snipped off the tab, and then sandwiched it in between. I didn't know how much stress was going to be on it. I haven't used this die set in this way before, so I wanted to make sure that that area was really strong. And then I'm not even sure if you can see, but there is another tab, or the other end of that tab is right in there. So I didn't have time to do a full tutorial on this. So might be confusing if you don't have the label charm pop-up, but if you have it and you've assembled it already, it will make sense. You will know that in order to attach this to your card base, you need a tab, and just cutting a small tab and attaching it to the back of this label, and then the inside of the card, assembling it as you normally would, or folding it as you normally would to attach it, works like a charm. In my head, you were going to see it, so I used a scrap of the watercolored paper to get that, and of course you can see that it's green. It might be even less noticeable if I had used just white cardstock, but I don't plan these things ahead. I just create as I go. There's a whole lot of what if. What if I try this? What if I try that? What if I glue it here? That goes on a lot when I'm making a card. So when I'm doing a variation, that first one doesn't always work out exactly the way I kind of envisioned in my head, but you know, a smart person would do a prototype out of scrap cardstock and get all the measurements worked out. But I usually don't have time for that. I just want to make a card. I've got it in my head, and I can usually figure out a way to make it work, even if it doesn't work out perfectly. So I'm just going to splice this little video into the main one, and then I can get this card addressed and off to my friend Debbie. If you enjoyed my video and tutorial today, please hit that like button. I'd love you to subscribe to see more of my cards and tutorials. And that's it for me today.